Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
I love the way she thinks because she thinks like we do in terms of a interior designer and what you want to get the most out of when it comes to your living space. And you can be sitting there on the couch and you'd be looking at a wall and you think, well, it's not working, but I'm not really sure what to do with it. We're going to talk just that's a piece of the stuff that probably goes through your head. The biggest challenges when it comes to design stuff that we don't have answers to. So we throw it to a professional. That's what she does. And she's back with us from Rise Interiors. Mary Jo Major is on the program. How you doing today?
Hi, Steve. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you back. I love what we're going to talk about here
Yeah.
because as you mentioned it before we got on, all I did was think about the different places I've lived in, including my current, and what I would do with these different scenarios and situations. And I don't have answers. And I'm sure you get that from clients too.
Yes, typically there's a couple things right off the bat when I talk to someone that they talk about is like their biggest challenge. And they're things that, seem kind of ordinary, but also for their particular room or their particular situation just feels really tricky for whatever reason.
Hmm. So where do we start? There's so many different things,
Yeah.
different scenarios that could come up here.
There are, Steve. There's so many different ones. So I was thinking about specifically the ones that I see the most. The first one I would say is high ceilings. I think a lot of people, whenever they move into, especially kind of more the newer homes, they have usually a living area or some sort of room with really high ceilings. And it feels kind of daunting. Like they love it. They love how much natural light it gets or how, big and roomy it feels. But there is this question of what am I supposed to do with this? How do I make it feel cozy as well as, light and airy? And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I think, where I would start is a couple of things. Is the first thing is your eye is actually, it plays tricks on you. So you can actually kind of draw an imaginary line at the height of where you want the ceiling to actually feel. So, for example, if you have windows and you sometimes there'll be one set of windows, sometimes there'll be two. But if you have one set of windows, if you have, let's just say like curtains or drapery on each one of those windows, your eye, when you walk into a space, will look at the top of those drapes and kind of think that that is the ceiling height, even though it's not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's a way to kind of help. So I would say the first thing to help with high ceilings is to add some sort of drapery on the windows, to add some sort of or lines, something, some sort of soft treatment that would help your eye to kind of see the top of the window as being kind of the top of the ceiling.
So it's a Jedi mind trick.
Yes,
And
it's all mind tricks.
what we're the goal here, just want to make sure I got it right. The goal here is to make the ceiling look lower.
Yes, it's to make the space feel cozy. Because I
Okay.
think sometimes you love the high open ceilings, but it feels a little like a castle, or it feels a little bit,
Yeah.
uncomfortable. There's something about it that you can't quite put your finger on that you go, I like this, but I don't know if I want to spend hours and hours and hours here. So you start to figure out, well, what's wrong? Why do I not want to spend all this time here when I should?
So that being said, I'm going to go
Yeah.
back to a Mary Jo trick that we talked
Yeah.
about. I don't know, maybe like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago,
Okay.
and it's trending. Painting the ceiling a dark color so it
Yes.
like en envelops you or envelopes you, whatever it is, in a space. Would that work for a high ceiling?
Yes, that would absolutely work for a high ceiling. That's the other thing that's been going around that I'm glad you mentioned that I was going to bring up as well. The specifically, actually, Steve, not only paint, but people are starting to put more wood on the ceiling. Almost like, whether
Hmm.
it's real or faux, whatever you want to, whatever you want to do, but some sort of natural material element to kind of again bring in those warmth. I actually
Ah.
just saw there's a new kind of design idea house that I just saw some pictures for, and there was this huge room that's exactly what they did. They added in these kind of this wood this I guess it's paneling, these wood planks in the ceiling. And, I think sometimes you might think that, oh, that's for people that want their house to look or feel a certain way. But I would actually argue that those kind of textures in the ceiling can kind of be super modern or very traditional. They can kind of go either way. But yes, creating that warmth, that whether it's a color or just a kind of a warmer texture really does make the room feel, yeah, that cozy feeling you want.
Okay, we're going to get a little granular here. Based
Okay,
on
sounds
what
good.
you just said,
Uh-huh.
with the wood texture, I'm
Yeah.
envisioning just wood beams go across, and it can look, if you leave it as natural wood, especially like a dark
Yeah.
rusticy wood, it'll have that look. But
Hmm.
you could also, I would imagine, make it finished, sanded, painted. But here's your ceiling, right?
Right.
High ceiling,
Yes.
and then you find a point to put them this way. Would
Yep.
that give you the same effect of it being lower?
Yes, it would. It totally would. Having some sort of, honestly, even Steve, I've seen it where even them painting white, not even like dark color can have
That's what I'm
this.
saying.
Yeah.
If you don't want to go for the farmhouse country look, the rustic kind of
Right.
thing, make it just look, squared off,
Right.
clean, white, or whatever, color that supports your room.
Yes.
And just do two or three going across, because Jedi mind trick again, your mind will say, "Oh, that's the ceiling." It's
That's
really
the
not.
ceiling.
Hmm.
And I've even seen it. There's another home that I've seen where they actually did wallpaper on the ceiling. And it was like a black and white stripe, which kind of sounds a little trippy. It sounds like it's a circus, but it was the way that it was done was really sophisticated. And it actually made, again, it did the same thing that we're talking about. It kind of helped the ceiling feel lower. And then the other thing you can do, and most homes have this in the big ceilings, but a light fixture that hangs down is important because that's another way that your eye kind of sees the space as being, oh, it's this level. So having a light fixture that's, whether there's a couple or just one, but something that's kind of lower, uh, lower than just at the very top, right? That's kind of hanging in the middle. That
Hmm.
that is a really big key feature as well.
Um, when you mentioned the wallpaper, ceiling, and all of that,
Right.
I have some acquaintances who just
Uh-huh.
opened a new restaurant
Okay.
like 2 weeks ago,
Okay.
and was just trolling online last night, and they got uh, a few substantial negative reviews, and
Oh no.
half of it was the decor.
Oh
and
no, that's
and
terrible.
and
What did they do?
I'm trying to remember because there's a lot going on,
Oh
but
gosh.
it was an older restaurant. They modernized it, but they wanted to keep the old world charm.
Okay.
But it's I'm going by memory here. It's sort of like a rusticy, darker red,
Okay.
with colors that support. But I think there's just too much going on,
Oh.
and people actually threw him under the bus for it. And I was just like,
Oh man. I
I'll
hope,
send you some pictures, and no
yeah, send
no
me some
names or anything, but
photos.
or you
I
know what,
hope,
I'll send you a link to the website, and
yes.
you take a look at it, and I don't
You
know.
know, that actually is a good, I'm glad you actually talked about this. I'm feel so sad for your friends. I hope that they're able to kind of edit, but that is another challenge that I think that people have is they have a lot of things that they love, and so they kind of get
Yeah.
everything, right? More and more and more. And there is something to that, right? Of having the things that you enjoy all around you. But I would say that, if you leave your room and you close your eyes and then you kind of come back in and you open them, where does your eye want to look first? And that's really important, Steve, because if your eye
Hmm.
can't find a focal point, if your eye is kind of all over the place because there's a lot that it's trying to figure out at the same time, then there usually is a few things that you need to kind of scale back and either rehouse in another room or, figure out another way to display it. Because I do think that having too much to look at when you come in, even if it's, something you've had for a long time, can eventually, I think you start to, um, I think it can affect even maybe like your mental health. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but I do think that when you have all kinds of stuff all over the place, I think eventually, having just piles of other things right around your house don't quite register. And so, not to say that there's
Hmm.
anything wrong with just day in, day out living of laundry and, mail that needs to be going through. But I do think that mental health comes into play when there is a lot that your eye's trying to focus on, and it actually makes it exhausting to be in a space.
Yeah. To your point, a couple of people that put up the reviews about the decor. I mean, they talked about the food, some like, some didn't, whatever. I mean, they got out of 5 stars, they get like a 4.1. They've only been open 2 weeks though.
Right.
And somebody actually said that the decor gave him a migraine. So
Oh, that's so
yeah,
bad.
yeah.
Well,
And it's the tip and final point on all of this
yeah,
is they've got this old world charm going on,
right.
but to go along with the name of the restaurant, they have these cheeky paintings of a um, figure,
Okay.
but it's sort of like tongue in cheek.
Oh, I
So,
see.
we're
Uh-huh.
going from this to that to this to that all over the place. And
Yeah.
people actually said they like the paintings. They like the paintings, but they didn't like the stripes going here and the color over there and all of that. Oh, I
Mm.
would love you. I would love your feedback
Well,
on it.
yeah, I hope that I don't know if they did it themselves or they hired someone, but I hope that if they hired someone, that person will help them kind of re tweak some details. But yes,
Yeah.
yeah, please send it. I'd love to see. But yeah, I do think that that is a challenge. And something else that I think can be disorienting. I'm kind of thinking through another challenge that I come up across is just having um multiple entry points in a living room or a
Mm,
space. So
mm,
especially homes that have, additions, all kinds of things, a kitchen, whatever it is may be. I feel like, when you have multiple doorways or openings, it feels really tough to know, well, how do I like, where am I going to put something that actually feels comfortable again? Because
mm.
I think most people are used to having a couple walls, along bigger walls that they can kind of put furniture on, and then something above the sofa, kind of, I would say the cookie cutter living room, if you think about it.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I would say my best advice without seeing kind of the actual space, because sometimes it depends on the space, but just think about what your living room kind of where again you want your focus to be, whether that's the TV, the fireplace, or each other, other seating, and then just kind of float all the furniture. Just pretend that there are walls and just kind of float the furniture. So it's okay if you walk in and you're at the back of the sofa. It's okay if you walk in and you're
Uh,
at the back of, you're the back of a couple accent chairs. Like, it's okay. I think sometimes again it's trying to figure out, how to make people feel like they can just be welcome into a space and walk around, but just know that it's okay to walk into the back of something.
that's a good point because we're fixated on can't see the back of a couch. No, no, it's bad.
Right.
But it's okay. And when
Yeah.
you say multiple entry points, does that also include, let's say you have an open area, which
Uh-huh.
this is going back to my last house, open concept kitchen, had high ceilings, and from the bedrooms, is that also an entry point?
Yes, I would say whatever's kind of a doorway or an opening into another room or another space.
I had four leading to the
Yeah.
kitchen and that open area. Yeah. And if you include the sliders to the patio or the
Right.
deck,
Yeah.
that's another entry point. So,
Yeah.
hmm.
So did you have a lot of storage in your kitchen because of all that?
um a
Or was it
fair amount. There was an
okay, good.
island as well. Um,
Okay.
but
Great.
in that area, you had the kitchen, call it a dining area.
Right.
Where there was a dining room table. If there wasn't, what are you gonna do with that space anyway? So just and then a living room area as
Uh-huh.
well. But it
Okay.
was it I never used that area because there was a living room downstairs. It was almost like I guess a sitting
Um,
area, but it
yes.
was never used. It was almost a crime to throw, I gave the couches away because it just made the most sense, but they weren't even used because the room was never used. The only time that room was ever used was during holidays where you needed extra space to sit, like after eating dinner, sit on the couch and just sit. Oh, I gotta
Right.
gotta take a moment
Right.
here. That was it.
Right.
Nobody ever watched TV. And I had sound system and everything. So yeah,
Wow.
there was an identity crisis going on in that area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With spaces like that, the spaces that I would say you don't spend a lot of time in, it usually is a result of kind of what you're just saying, is there's usually a kind of a lack of personality. I imagine if there was all your favorite colors and a lot of other kind of stuff going on that interesting, I imagine that you might have wanted to spend more time in it. But I do think that having
Mm.
the purpose, the purpose of a space and who's going to interact with it. I feel like when there's just a few people, I don't know how many people you live with, but I feel like if there's um 2 to 3, sometimes when those kind of secondary spaces aren't used, you kind of have to really identify like a reason to have, to go in there, kind of like you're saying. So it's one is hosting, but the other one, maybe that's just where you guys have, your long social media, scrolling, like you keep
Well,
checking your
yes,
couch.
it was
Yeah.
used. It was used for that too. If you want to sit on the couch, it was a table there. The laptop was sitting right there. Um,
Right.
let's say,
Yeah.
how about rugs? How do you know, like,
Yes.
area rug, throw rug? How do you know how big to buy?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great one. I would say that you want at least the front legs of all your furniture to be on it. So, and if this is a dining room, I have another rule for that. But if it's a living room, usually the bigger the better. So I would say, depending on the size of your living room, definitely an 8 by 10 is usually like the standard. And then going up 9 by 12, 10 by 14, any of those bigger sizes are the best for
Wow.
living rooms. Yeah, you don't, you're again, Jedi mind trick. Your eye looks at a room and it defines kind of sometimes the room based off the area rug and how big it is. Again, it's a subconscious, you don't even realize it, but when you have kind
Wow.
of smaller rugs, you think that the room is kind of smaller for some reason versus when the rugs are bigger, you feel like it's bigger. So
Ooh, that's dangerous. Because if you're not thinking that, oh, a rug is on sale, let me buy that. And then you throw it in, you lift up all the furniture, put the rug down, and then you look at it, it's like, something's different. I don't like the way it looks. I like the rug,
yeah,
but wow, that's key right there. And now
yeah.
you bought the rug.
No, you've got the right. And I have had clients, the tricky part is I live in DC, right? So I feel like in older cities, sometimes it is kind of tricky where you have the more awkward spaces where you're like, oh, I want a bigger rug, but it's kind of long and narrow. There's not really anything that's like this exact size. And I would encourage you just to save up or whatever to do what you need to do to get a rug that's the right size,
Okay.
to get one that's kind of made to fit your space because it makes a huge difference.
So you said dining area and
Yeah.
a rug there. Throw, an area rug, throw a rug. I never even thought of that. So do tell.
Yes. So I'm a big proponent of your comfort level. So I have some clients that are all about it, and I have other clients that are like, oh no, no, I don't want a dining room rug. But I would say if you do it, make sure that the chairs can easily kind of come off of it without catching. You don't want any people kind of scooting out and falling because their chair leg kind of catches on the edge of the rug. So again, I would say kind of the bigger the better. So usually again, it depends on the size of your table, but anywhere from kind of the 8 by 10s and up. And Steve, when you have a an actual dining room, sometimes it's even best to get one that fills most of the space itself. So you can even, depending on the size of your room, you can get kind of a really big one to almost look like a wall-to-wall carpet, which, as we spoke about a few weeks ago, was one of the new trends coming up. And so, yeah, whatever's going to make it, one, safe, but two, kind of visually create kind of a larger area
Hmm.
is really key. And I would also add, a lot of people, just for the sake of cleaning, try to get something that's synthetic, like a nylon or a polyester or a wool. Both of those kind of options are going to be the easiest to clean under a dining room table.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Other challenges.
So the
Yeah.
other challenge I was thinking about is storage, right? So I think everyone at some point or another is frustrated about their lack of storage and what do I do? Where am I going to put all this stuff? And I, you know, again, when I'm working with people who have kind of the smaller spaces or they have a whole lot and they need to kind of cram as much as possible, think about basically every single thing you can possibly think of, try it to be dual purpose storage. Like
Hmm.
I've been watching that show, Is It Cake or Not on Netflix. Have you seen that show before?
Haven't but heard about it.
Okay, so where they have these ordinary objects and they're like, is this cake? And then they slice it open and it's like, a pillow and it's now cake.
Uh,
Think about that for storage. Is this storage? Yes, it is storage. Is the coffee table storage? Yes. Is anything vertical? I would say again, go vertical as much as you can. Bookcases, cabinets. You do want some walls that don't have anything on them, in terms of a storage piece. When you have every single wall with a bookcase, it does it depends on the feel you want, but it can sometimes feel a little what's the word I'm trying to look for? Yeah, just
Enclosed.
just a little closed, and it doesn't always feel yeah, there's like an imbalance where your eye, there's a lot to look at, and unless you're going for the library feel, it just feels again, it's kind of a lot on your eye. So yes, but I would say anything that you can make into storage. My favorite ways to store are through kind of a media cabinet that kind of is like a mix of media cabinet slash, drawers, all that kind of stuff. And I'm talking like a media cabinet, Steve. I'm not talking about those little shelves. I'm talking about one that goes from the TV, a 36-inch height all the way to the ground and is filled with doors and stuff. You can use those for games, you can use those for all kinds of things. And then also, yeah, what goes in the middle. So an ottoman, a storage coffee table, something that has a use for kind of as much as you can. Even and I've even seen it where the edge of certain sectionals or certain sofas, if they have
Oh,
like that
wow.
piece that juts out, it's called the chaise. That I've even seen that be used as storage.
Can I tell you, ever since I moved and I purged, obviously when you move, that's what you're
Oh
doing.
yeah, that's normal. Uh-huh.
The entertainment cabinet, if you want to call it that.
Right.
TV's on the wall, but it's underneath it. And
Okay.
there's, some storage areas. So I have a couple of books in there that I have yet to read. Um, but
They're visual. They're to remind you need to read them.
it makes me look intelligent.
Right, right.
Underneath, there's doors that open. Can I
Uh-huh.
tell you, there's nothing in there.
Oh, well, that's great.
But here's why. And I was cleaning over the weekend. It was time Sunday. It was long overdue. I did a deep clean and I
Okay.
passed by as I'm vacuuming. I'm like, I forgot they were there. And
Yeah.
I was like, I could put stuff, but I don't want to.
Okay. Okay.
I don't want to because I'm in a somewhat minimalistic mode, not like overkill or anything, but
Mhm.
you know,
Sure.
came from this to now scale it down,
Yeah.
put some stuff in storage, purge things and all that. So it's like, well, what can I put in there? I got space, I could use it, but I don't know if I want to. Just
I
knowing, it's clean.
yes, I understand. There's some beauty to that, to knowing that there's just kind of this empty storage. For those kind of spaces, I would encourage you, if you wanted to think about specifically like seasonal stuff. So instead of having, a Christmas box or some sort of, something, if maybe those spaces, those unused spaces are specifically for those kind of things where it's kind of once a year you need to get them out, and maybe they normally be in your attic, and maybe you just kind of purge enough to where they can fit in those spots. I mean, I don't
Sure.
know, but
Everything I
yeah.
just said does not apply if you have small children. My youngest is 16, so all bets are off for that.
Right.
When
Or
they're
small city spaces, city dwellers.
yes, you
Yes.
crave those little, I got something. I
Yes.
put it in here, put it in there.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
cool,
I
great
yeah.
topic today. Got to tell you,
Oh, thanks.
and it went back to the fundamental. And you've said this before that when you walk in a room, where does your eye go? And then
Yeah.
also, what do you remember from
Right.
it? And,
Right.
from the restaurant, what do I remember? These vertical gold and red stripes and other stuff.
So,
Yeah.
sounds like that might need a yeah.
Yeah. And a
Need tweak.
reevaluation, a reevaluation.
Right.
Um,
Right.
in the chat, I sent you the URL
Okay.
for it. So, when you get a chance, I'm curious, your
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
professional feedback.
Yeah.
Speaking of your URLs, what's your website?
Yes. Yeah. My website is riseinteriors.co. So it's
Gotcha.
plural, riseinteriors.co.
You're fantastic in
Thanks, Steve.
making it relatable. Everything you talk about is stuff that right away I get visuals in my mind, whether it's this house, the one before that, what I could do, what I should have done, never make that mistake again. And, certainly, the tips and tricks of the area rug, the high ceiling. You're not going to find that stuff online. You need a professional interior designer. That's it. Because every space is different. You look at every space and then evaluate it and then, go from there. I love it. Always love having you on here. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve. It was great being here.
We'll catch up next time. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.